On the draw, we have a Boggle, a couple of 1-mana auras, no second land, which is the main problem with the hand. If I was on the play, I would consider mulliganing, although if we're able to just draw cards off the Keen Sense, that would be great. Potentially draw into that second land. I'm going to keep because we have a turn 1 Boggle, and you don't want to mulligan too many hands that have a turn 1 Boggle. Because sometimes you don't have one, and not knowing what we're up against, those are the most important cards to be looking for. Oath of Nissa means hard to say what we're up against. Wall of Omens getting found. Interesting. So just going to untap. Drew a Razor Birch Thicket, which is couldn't have asked for anything better for that draw step. The exact perfect card. So we're going to play that Razor Birch Thicket, get that Slippery Boggle into play. And we can actually go ahead and play the Core Spirit Dancer here. Or the alternative is to play a couple of auras on the Boggle. But I think, considering what we've seen out of our opponent, I'm not immediately thinking, okay, our opponent has a lot of removal. Maybe we're up against a deck with Path to Exile in it, but if we're able to, we're just going to play the Spirit Dancer. If we're able to untap with it and just kind of go off, it's going to be perfect. Now, if it dies to a removal spell, okay, sure, that happens. Then we're still going to be able to untap and suit up this Slippery Boggle with some auras and be in a fine spot. So we see Oath of Nissa and Wall of Omens. Thinking, okay, combo deck. Probably has some sort of flicker effects. Could be even Saheeli's. Could be, okay, so Renegade Rallier is going to be the play. So that's going to get back this Windswept Teeth. So that's a pretty solid sequence. And now sacrifice the Windswept Teeth. Could be a 1-mana, okay, Oath of Nissa. So we'll see what gets found here off of this Oath. We know the wall got found off of the first Oath. So our opponent's going for a lot of value, but we're just going to try to kill them ASAP. So it's going to be Felidar Guardian. So we know we're up against probably the modern Saheeli Rai combo deck. Okay. So knowing that piece of information, we should probably just try to win as quickly as possible, which means rather than going ahead and putting ours on the Slippery Boggle, we can just go for the Core Spirit Dancer instead. So I think that's the play here. So the question is, how do we want to sequence all of these auras? We may want to just play all of our 1-mana auras this turn. Let's start with Rancor, see what we find off of it. Okay, it's going to be Daybreak Coronet. But I think we want to play our 1-mana auras just to be able to cantrip, draw some cards. Yes, this Core Spirit Dancer could die to removal. It's a possibility, but if our opponent didn't play removal this last turn, kind of unlikely that they actually do have a removal spell. So we've got an 11/11 first strike trample. Our opponent could throw some creatures in front of it. Looks like it's just going to be the wall. So we're going to draw a card. And now, even if our opponent does have a removal spell for the Spirit Dancer, we can potentially just throw a bunch of auras onto the Slippery Boggle anyways. So a really great spot to be in. And because our opponent only has 5 lands, they cannot just go, alright, Felidar Guardian, blink a land, place a Healy. You would need 6 lands for that. So we want to try to avoid that being a possibility and win this following turn if possible. So I'm going to take this hit from the Renegade Rallier. Not really particularly worried about it. Our opponent can play Felidar Guardian, sure. That's going to allow the Rallier can now get back Oath of Nissa. Okay, sure. That happens. Unclear what our opponent's actually digging for in this spot. So Windswept Heath is going to be the reveal. So the only card we actually have to be thinking about in this spot is a Path to Exile. So we can assume that maybe our opponent does have a path for the Spirit Dancer. That would be unfortunate. It would be worst case scenario as well. So we can go ahead and load up some of our creatures on some of our enchantments onto the Slippery Boggle here. So I'm going to play a Spirit Mantle on the Boggle. See what we can find off of this. Okay, it's going to be a Rancor. So we could play Daybreak Coronet, but I think we want to play Rancor on the Boggle. Let's see. So our opponent can double block Core Spirit Dancer, and that's going to mean 7 points of trample going through. So yeah, I'm happy to just play Rancor on the Boggle here. This way, the reason why I'm doing it this way is if we draw exactly an Ethereal Armor, that would be great, but instead we draw Rancor, so I'm just going to play Rancor, and we're just going to hope that our opponent doesn't have Path to Exile into Saheeli. So the other reason why I like playing the Rancor here, by the way, is that it gives us another draw towards Path. So, say our opponent, we have to assume that our opponent could have a Path to Exile. If that's the case, then we still have to try to win this game. And so if we were to draw into a Path there, we could just play an untapped land and Path. So our opponent did have the Path, which is unfortunate. So now we're at our opponent's mercy. If our opponent just has the Saheeli, there was never anything we could do, I don't think. We're just going to take our medicine, and that would be lethal. It's just the lethal combo, so hopefully we can dodge that. Now, maybe our opponent has redraws. That's also a possibility. So our opponent could maybe Flicker Oath or have... So Renegade Rallier, that's going to probably find Oath to try to find Saheeli. So we'll see if our opponent can find it. That looks like three draws to try to hit it. So this is a sweat. It's like a standard sweat. Hoping to dodge anything but Saheeli, and I think we have this game. So, yep, okay, sweet. That was definitely a close one. It looked like our opponent may have just picked up the Path right, in the nick of time to get rid of the Spirit Dancer, but in the end, it turns out that you still need both parts of your combo, even if you're able to deal with our Spirit Dancer there. So, boarding against this deck you would think that Gatateak would be good, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem great because there's not too many non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or more. The Spirit Link seems pretty mediocre in this matchup. Lifelink is nice, but it seems like we're more likely to lose by getting comboed out than anything. So I'm going to board out one of the Spirit Links in favor of a Rest in Peace. Just because Rest in Peace, it's not great in this matchup, but it can stop the Renegade Rallier type stuff. So let's go with this. Not changing too much, just keeping to the primary game plan. And this hand has a Boggle. A little bit land heavy, but I think we want to keep this anyways. If we draw a Path, we can try to hold that until our opponent tries to combo, but it looks like this time there is going to be a turn 1 Noble Hierarch to contend with. So Glade Cover into Armor into Coronet. It's not the fastest draw, so if our opponent is able to curve out a little bit, okay, there's an Essence Warden. That's interesting. So our opponent can, gain a bunch of life with Guardian plus Saheeli. And I guess this card is just going to make it take us longer to win. So there's a Felidar Guardian that our opponent's revealing. So that's likely going to blink the Oath of Nissa. So Rancor is a pretty solid draw here. We're just going to play both of our auras. Now, the thing about Essence Warden is we don't have that many creatures. So it's not amazing against our deck, but the fact that our opponent has creatures means, okay, one Essence Warden, maybe it gains you 5 life or so on average. Maybe more because of all of the flickering effects. That's still going to be, it's going to be 1 or 2 more attacks that we're going to need to make, essentially, in order to win the game. So Wall of Omens into Oath. So this kind of indicates our opponent doesn't have a third land. So Wooded Foothills was found off of the wall. We can play Coronet, which we are locked into doing. So we're going to play Coronet on the Glade Cover Scout here. Although, having picked up the Unflinching card, it's a little bit more of a decision, but the Coronet is just more damage. So I think we want to go with Daybreak Coronet and then play Unflinching Courage next turn. So this is a 9 attack for 9. I mean, it's not too shabby. Looks like just going to be a chump block here to save 4 damage. If we're able to find something like a Griff Spoon or a way to give our Glade Cover Scout evasion, that would be nice. Another Ethereal Armor, that would be great. So, a number of draw steps that could allow us to have close to lethal on our next turn at the very least. Unfortunately, we don't have a Path to Exile. That's the real flaw with this hand, like our last hand. So we're vulnerable to Felidar Guardian plus Saheeli. And I don't know, I just kind of have the read that our opponent has the Saheeli this time. Could be wrong. Last game didn't feel like it. This game, it looks like our opponent's just going to flicker the Noble Hierarch to gain life. So that is a clear indicator they are just trying to survive this turn. Oh, that was an accident. I should have just blocked that Essence Warden. Don't know why our opponent attacked with it. Doesn't really make sense in any way, but I guess, yeah. I'm at a loss to why our opponent made that attack. But in any case, I'm going to play the unflinching courage here on the Glade Cover Scout. So we can attack for 12, put our opponent to 4, and then we can play this Windswept Heath just to represent a path, even though we don't have it, and our opponent probably isn't going to play around it. So, is it going to be Saheeli? No, it's actually not going to be Saheeli. I was really expecting to see Saheeli, so it looks like maybe that error of not... definitely should have gone for that blink, but it looks like our opponent is just going to continue to flicker cats and gain infinite life with Essence Warden. So this is going to be another way for our opponent to win. So our opponent's just going to continue flicker, 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 and yeah. So this is another infinite combo, and I'm not going to make our opponent go through all of this. It's clear our opponent can just gain as much life as they want to, and there's nothing we can do. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and concede this game. And so even if we had, I have no idea why our opponent attacked with the Essence Warden that time. Just one of those Moto misclicks. But even if our opponent has one Essence Warden, it still allows you to gain infinite life. I'm not going to put our opponent in the spot where, okay, you actually have to click through all of the triggers and gain all of the life. So that was pretty cool. Hats off to our opponent there for having that exact combination of cards there, being the double Felidar Guardian plus Essence Warden. So in terms of sideboarding, we're still not going to change that much. Hopefully the paths aren't going to be sticking to the bottom of our library again. And in terms of sideboarding, the Rest in Peace seems pretty bad. Gaddock Teague doesn't seem great. So maybe we just go back to the Spirit Link. But yeah, none of these options seem great, so I'm just gonna go with Rest in Peace here. Hopefully we don't draw the Rest in Peace because I honestly don't want it. So let's see what we got. All right, this I think we want to keep this. Not a great hand, but we have two auras, which is two hexproof creatures. Now we only actually need one of them. So having not played this matchup, this is a hand I would keep in the dark. We're going to be able to pressure our opponent. The Umbras aren't the best of our enchantments. So I think we want to just play some Umbras here. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to start to make this Glade Cover Scout into a legitimate threat. So now our opponent's taking 3. If we draw a land, we can go for Unflinching Courage. But once again, we don't have a Path to Exile in hand. So our opponent is in fact playing Saheeli, and it has been revealed now to Oath of Nissa. And yeah, not the draw we wanted, not at all. So we're just going to attack here, and our draw steps have been Slippery Boggle, Unflinching Courage. So yeah, they just haven't been good draw steps. But you know, that happens. So we'll see if our opponent runs out the Saheeli or maybe has another play. Oath is gonna allow our opponent to really set up here. And it's gonna be another Saheeli that's found there. Multiple Saheelis, okay, that's not that scary. But one, maybe our opponent plays one here. Unless they have, we're definitely hoping our opponent does not have Felidar Guardian, because then our opponent just already has access to the combo, and we have no interaction in hand. Alright, so our opponent does have the Guardian. That means we essentially need to find a path to exile off the top in order to even just stay alive in this game, which is a pretty miserable spot, to be honest with you. So, okay. Well, there's the path. So the question now is, do we wait to use the path? I'm just going to go ahead and get in with both creatures here, and if our opponent decides to block the Slippery Boggle, okay. We're just going to path on our opponent's turn here. So yeah, losing that guy, not really a big deal. I would rather just kind of hold up path so that we're at least making our opponent tick down Saheeli to then flicker the Felidar, and then the Saheeli is on one loyalty. So that's kind of the reasoning behind this play. So instead of going for Saheeli, our opponent's going to go for another copy of Felidar Guardian first. That seems really good, because now our opponent can just play Saheeli, tick it down on the Felidar, and we have to respond with Path. So we get to Path this, but our opponent actually has a backup Saheeli in hand, so even if we get this Saheeli off the battlefield, we still die to the following Saheeli. Now, of course, we just drew the best possible card, which was a second copy of Path. Wow, that's running Path to Exiles. I will accept that. I don't really have words at this point. So, just feeling quite fortunate. Just going to go ahead, Path the Felidar, and we can take the Saheeli off the battlefield, deal our opponent 3 damage. Now, the fact is that even though we draw on double path, our opponent could just win next turn still if they have another Felidar. And even if they don't have another Felidar, we don't have that much pressure, so we're not going to be able to win immediately. And our opponent's immediately tapping 4 mana, so it looks like our opponent actually has exactly what they need, another copy of Felidar Guardian. So this is just going to be the combo. We're just going to get comboed here. Our opponent's going to play Saheeli, and that's going to be it. So even though we drew both Path to Exiles for back-to-back, it just wasn't enough. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words at this point. This hand in this matchup wasn't great. I'm willing to admit that. But our opponent's draw was great. Mana Dork into the combo, and so yep, our opponent's just gonna blink Felidar, and now Felidar blinks Saheeli, and yep, that's gonna be the combo, the copycat combo, of course.